I shot the same fitness model 3 completely different ways across different spaces and lighting setups. Same person, totally different looks. In this video, I'll break down how I lit each one and how they came together in the edit. So Haley is a fitness model and a bikini athlete, and I reached out to her with an idea to shoot images for a potential submission to Fitness Magazine's Hot 100. When she got back to me, she was super upfront and said, "Hey, just so you know, I'm in my bulk phase right now, so I'm not in peak competition form." And honestly, that didn't bother me at all. She was down to shoot, and I actually thought it made the project more interesting. Real athletes aren't always stage ready, and I wanted to see what we could create anyway. So we decided to go for it, and at the very worst, we just wouldn't submit the photos if we didn't feel comfortable with them. We shot part of the session in a gym using the weight room as a real-world environment, and then we moved to a backdrop where I could control the light a bit more and experiment with studio-style setup. For the first setup, we shot in the weight room. This was a 2-light setup using 2 Westcott FJ400s. My main light was an octobox standing as the key light, shaping Haley's physique and giving me a nice controlled fall off. The second light was a softbox placed behind her at an angle to act as a rim and a hair light, just to separate her from the background and give a bit more definition. We started on one side of the benches and then moved over to the squat rack to change up the look without changing the lighting. Haley did a quick wardrobe change and we kept shooting right away to keep the momentum going. We also tried shooting on the plyo boxes and over by the wall, and honestly, this part of the process, both of us looked at those images and agreed they just weren't working. Not every setup is a winner, and knowing when to move on is just as important as knowing how to light the shot.
That light in the background.
The other thing we have to worry about is there's mirrors everywhere in here, and sometimes the reflection from the flash gets shown. For the second setup, this one was very much inspired by an Instagram account that Haley follows and really likes. She mentioned that she always is drawn to that clean, studio-style look that feels like natural window light, so the goal here was to recreate that vibe artificially. We moved out of the gym and into a more controlled space with a simple backdrop so the lighting could do all the work. Both lights are coming from the same direction to mimic how window light would naturally fall across the body. My main light here is a Westcott FJ400 with a 36-inch octobox acting as the key. Right beside it, at the same angle, I added the Lindsay Adler optical spot with a window cutout. That optical spot isn't there to overpower the image, it's just adding some subtle window pattern and extra shape so it feels like the light is coming through a real space. From there, we focused on posing and variety. We used a stool and a box, then moved in tighter for close-ups and detail shots. Because the lighting stayed consistent, we could focus on the expression, posture, and small adjustments instead of constantly resetting lights. Because the lighting stayed consistent, we could focus on expression, posture, and small adjustments instead of constantly resetting the lights. This setup is a good example of how you can take inspiration from a style you like online and reverse engineer it using simple tools and controlled light. For the last setup, I didn't change the backdrop at all. The only thing I changed was the lighting. Instead of a 2-light setup, I stripped it right back to a single light to finish the shoot. This was one Westcott FJ400 pushed through a 7-foot umbrella with no diffusion. The light stayed in roughly the same position as the previous setup, but the goal here was completely different. I wasn't trying to shape or add drama, I just wanted really soft, even light that wrapped around Haley and lit the entire scene consistently. Haley changed outfits for this look, so it was just a little bit different. But at this point in the day, Haley had been shooting for quite a while. She also had probably worked out for 3 hours and had her full-time job. So she had been posing, holding tension, working hard, so the energy was pretty much depleted at this point. And that's something I think photographers need to acknowledge more often. Once they're done, they are done. We've got a lot of really great shots, so we were pretty happy with that. One small thing that Haley brought to the shoot was a bit of body oil. Since she wasn't in a cutting phase, the oil helped add some shine and separation under the soft light, giving her skin some more dimension without needing harsher lighting. We kept this setup short, intentional, and clean, and then called it a day. In the end, we actually didn't submit these photos to Fitness Magazine, and that was a mutual decision. But honestly, I was happy with the images we created. If anything, this shoot was incredible practice for lighting decisions, posing, and directing. Every shoot like this makes the next one better. It builds confidence for both the photographer and the model, and it sets a foundation for future work when everything does line up. I will be shooting Haley later in the year, closer to when she's in her competition physique. Okay, so let's go through some of the editing process. I shot roughly 230 images, but not all of those were great, so I whittled it down to about 70. And just to show you some of my edits, I don't do a whole lot. I shoot a little bit darker than normal, so I bumped up the exposure. And when I do that, I just lower the whites and the highlights so that the skin doesn't look too bright. And then I maybe bump up the shadows a little bit. For the most part, I always add my clarity to about -30, and it just helps soften the image a little bit, and maybe 1 or 2 increases on the saturation. I shoot with a Sigma 24-70, so I always add my lens correction in there for the camera, and then I will sync it across all my images. Then I will just export it into Photoshop, where I do the rest of my finishing touches. Once I'm in Photoshop, I really don't do a whole lot. I will use the healing brush to fix any little problems with the backdrop that I can. And then I'm a big frequency separation guy. So I use Danny Bautista's frequency separation, and I will run that action through the image. And then I have the 2 layers that I work with. I have the texture layer and the color layer. And I always do the color layer first. So I will turn off the texture layer. I will use wet paint mixer brush. And all I'm doing here is just coloring in the skin and just evening out the different colors to smoothen out any harsh changes in shadows. And then I will paint the entire body. So it's a lot easier when they have clothes on because I don't have to worry about doing their clothes. But when it's mostly skin that I'm seeing, I'm going to brush the entire body. And that just evens out the skin. Once I'm done that, I will add the texture layer back on, and then I use the clone stamp tool, and I just clean up any little blemishes or imperfections in the skin, and it's just a quick, simple touch up there. And that's really all I do for skin touch up. I like the consistency of frequency separation. I'm kind of getting good at it, so that's all I really do. I'll then make sure that the backdrop looks pretty smooth and there's not a whole lot of wrinkles in it or anything like that. But I had it nice and tight for this shoot, so I don't have a whole lot of wrinkles. There's not much I have to do. Now there's not a whole lot different for this image. I just wanted to show you that when I change my lighting setup, I change my edits to match to make sure that all of each set is the same settings. All I'm doing here is just making sure that this entire set with this outfit and this lighting setup looks the same across the board. Now there is one thing that I want to show you that I think is a good trick with AI, and that is with this backdrop that isn't necessarily nice and clean. And that's just going to be in Photoshop. Once I get into Photoshop, I'm going to actually crop this image smaller than I want it, and I'm going to get rid of any of the pixels after I crop it. So I'm kind of making it so that I have a perfect image here, even though it's not the size that I want. And then as I crop it, it's going to delete all the pixels around the image that I've cropped out. And the reason why I'm doing this is it helps the generative AI fill in some of the gaps. So I don't have any distractions in this image. Now I want this to be a 16:9 ratio. And so now I'm going to crop it the size that I want, and I'm going to use generative AI to fill in what I have missing here. And it's going to do a better job knowing that I have this clean slate to work with in the beginning. And as you can see, it did a pretty good job of cleaning up that background. I find if I go through this process, AI does a better job of filling in what I actually want, with just making it a seamless backdrop. And AI put in some wrinkles in the background, so I'll just smooth those out with frequency separation and it'll look fine. And that's pretty much all I do for these edits. I'm curious, out of these 3 setups, which lighting style did you like the most? And why? Let me know in the comments. If you're new here, I'm Chris Hartman. I'm a photographer and a teacher, and on this channel I share real-world photo shoots just like this one, lighting breakdowns, editing workflows, and behind-the-scenes look at how images actually come together. This channel is about learning, experimenting, and getting better every time you pick up the camera. If that sounds like something you're into, make sure you subscribe. And if you found this video helpful, drop a comment or a question below. I read them all, and it really helps the channel grow. See you in the next one.